Welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. For many years, I improvised a new bedtime story for my children every night. Now, with their permission, I'm sharing the recordings of the best of those stories with you. Right now, we're about halfway through a long story that I told during the pandemic lockdown of 2020 about a girl who attends an online school for adventuring named Myra. I hope that you enjoy it as much as we did. Myra woke the next morning just as the sky started to lighten to a deep gray. She blinked her eyes open and stretched all of her really sore muscles. Wow, she thought, I thought I was in good shape after all these months of sneaker training, but whew. That run last night really took it out of me. She looked around. Her friends were asleep on the ground all around her, except for Tweety, who was already standing up and moving around the clearing from deer to deer. And there were a lot of deer. Myra did a quick head count and counted 23 of them. It took her a moment to spot Veer and Doa, since they were no longer in their deer forms. No longer in their human forms, right? They were no longer in their human forms. But they were the deer that were following Tweety around from one deer to another. Myra walked over. Tweety was making some very unusual grunting and sniffing noises. And Myra said, Tweety? Do you speak deer? And Tweety said, no, I wish I spoke deer, but I do speak wombat, which is sort of, has a lot of shared words, and so I think I'm making myself understood. However, I might be asking them to make us waffles. I'm really not entirely sure. Right, said Myra. Well, I suppose speaking wombat is better than... Now, wait a minute. Why do you speak wombat? Tweety shrugged. I really can't tell you, Tweety said. Why not? Said Myra. It's a secret, said Tweety. That's very sketchy, said Myra. Tweety just shrugged. Well, Myra said, I guess the sun's coming up, so we know which direction the school's in. It's time to wake the others, get some breakfast, and head out. She went around and woke all of her friends. All of them, except for Hetty, woke with just a gentle touch on the shoulder. Hetty, however, was out. The others had told her last night that Hetty and Broken Horn had been captured first by the string demon, and so they had been in the cocoons longest. Myra thought that perhaps that was why Hetty was tired. Of course, zealots probably also didn't have the sneaker training to always be sleeping on alert. But after a little bit firmer shake, Hetty blinked her eyes and sat up. Breakfast, said Myra, and then we're hitting the road. Hetty nodded. They sat down and ate the last of their supplies out of their backpacks. They shared stories about what had happened the night before. Myra told them about her encounter with Dolores. Great, said Corin. Now I know. All I need is cheese in my ears to avoid getting abducted by the Fae. Good, said Myra. I'm glad I've managed to teach you something on this little trip. Corin just rolled his eyes. As soon as they'd finished eating, Myra wandered over to Tweety, who was listening carefully to Broken Horn. What'd he say? Said Myra. Said Tweety, something demon, something fast, path, pancakes. No, wait, not pancakes. Clearing. Yeah, that's it. Myra said, can you ask him if they're ready? Tweety made more grunting noises, and the deer made noises back, and Tweety said, well, I think he said that the moon never sets on a red lake. or that could mean that he's ready. Myra said, "So how close exactly is Wombat to Deer?" "I really have no idea," said Tweety. "Let's go," said Myra. And so they headed out. As soon as the deer saw them all grouping up, a group of about 5 of them headed off out of the clearing towards the east. And then the rest of them formed up in sort of a large, loose circle around their group, several more falling back, and the 2 that Myra assumed were Doa and Veer walked with them. Their group was moving a little slower now. They were tired after their days through the forest and truly exhausted after their encounter with the string demon the day before, but it was the fear of another such encounter that kept driving them forward. Myra wasn't sure how far off course they had come or how far they had to go to get to the school. They walked through most of the morning without incident, no signs of the string demon or any fae, and they did not stop for lunch, but just a couple rest breaks. Myra was just starting to think that the forest was looking a little more familiar, sort of like the kinds of trees that she remembered being around the school when the ambush struck. Wargs stepped out all around their group. The deer lowered their antlers. The wargs' hackles went up and they growled. Myra looked around. "Anybody think we can avoid a fight here?" Tweety stepped forward. "Let me try," Tweety said. Myra said, "Do you speak warg?" Tweety shrugged. "Warg and wombat are really much closer than deer and wombat." So Tweety stepped forward, made the same sort of strange noises, and the warg that Myra remembered being pointed out to her as the matriarch growled back, and a series of growls and rumbles in her throat. Tweety looked back at Myra. "I actually got a lot of that," Tweety said. "They're hungry, and I'm going to explain to them what we're doing here, and why they should help us." Tweety made noises back, and the warg replied, and Tweety said, "They're willing to strike a deal. I've explained to them that if they give us safe passage through the forest and don't try to eat us now, that they will not lose any members of their pack because we are fearsome fighters. And also," said Tweety, "when we get back to the school, we will bring them a plate of cinnamon rolls." "Great," said Myra. "And they're going to go with that?" "I'm pretty sure yes," said Tweety. The wargs did indeed back away from the front of the group. Myra and the group started forward again, and whatever it was that Tweety had communicated seemed to be successful. They walked through the afternoon, and Myra was now quite sure that some of the trees were starting to look familiar. Just when they reached the point where she saw the path, the familiar path leading out of the forest and back to the school, she heard the rushing sound in the canopy of the string demon coming after them. They doubled their speed, and several of the deer broke off. Myra heard the sounds of combat behind them as they rushed along the trail, and then she heard it coming after them again. "Run," she said. She looked back just in time to see the string demon spring to the ground and start to rush towards the rear of their group, only to be attacked from both sides by wargs that seemed to come out of nowhere, harassing the string demon's legs, biting at its claws as they tried to move forward. The string demon began to spin string after them, but the wargs were fast and terribly clever. They led the string demon away as Myra and her friends sprinted down the last of the path and out into the safety of the school. Myra stopped. "Shouldn't we keep running?" asked Teddy. "No," said Myra. "It never leaves the forest. We're safe for now." And as she said it, she wondered whether someone holding the shears could truly be safe on the campus of the online school, and also wondered who was going to volunteer to take the cinnamon rolls back into the forest, because they definitely had been earned by that warg pack. And that is the end of the story for tonight. Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's show, but questions and commentary were supplied by my children. The theme music was written by Brandon Thompson, and our wonderful logo was designed by Silas Wendelin. If you're enjoying the show, please tell someone about it, and leave a review with your podcast provider. You can now subscribe to the show to get extra stories and longer chapters of Myra and the Online School that combine multiple segments into a longer episode. The show's website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.buzzsprout.com. Until next time, I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.